Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain my review of the latest Summon Showcase. It's a Gala Dragalia showcase, and it's the final showcase in the game, which will feature new adventurers. In case you're not aware, a few weeks back we found out that Dragalia Lost will be ending service sometime in the future. We know that the showcase that started March 31st is going to be the last showcase in the game featuring new adventures. That's going to be the one I review in this video, but fret not, there is still some content on the way. So in recent days, we've learned that we're still going to be getting some new endgame trials through July, including the Primal Dragon trials that we haven't gotten already. So that's going to be Zodiark, Mercury, and Jupiter, plus Legend difficulty of Surtur's trial in the Sinister Dominion. So there's still some content on the way. We still have the climactic finale of the main campaign, which is going to end in July, and who knows how long after that Dragalia Lost will be available. Now, having said that, it's still been pretty somber news and definitely been sad to process as we've tried to enjoy the 3.5-year anniversary. There's an exciting raid event happening right now. We just had our Summon Showcase with Galen Nedrick, and now we have this one with Bondforged Euden and Bondforged Zethia that we're going to talk about in this video. And frankly, I think this is a high note to go off on as the last showcase with new adventurers. Bondforged Euden looks extremely powerful. He seems like a fantastic DPS adventurer with lots of utility. I love that he focuses on dragon transformation, as that is one of the iconic elements of the game. And Zethia, in her Bondforged variant, also seems really powerful. She has great damage capability herself, an interesting mechanic that can help protect your entire team, and I also feel like with Zethia being such a central character from the original days of the game, it's great to get her playable, especially in a style that looks very reminiscent of her character. We had Zaina, who had a different look, and we had Gala's Zethia, who also had a different look influenced by Bahamut. So it's kind of cool to see a more traditional Zethia design, albeit definitely upgraded with her Bondforged capabilities, to be on this final Summon Showcase. So we'll talk a little bit about possibilities for the future as we go along, but my verdict on this one is you'll certainly want to summon. I would say put whatever resources you have to this, and let's see what happens over the next several months. But I think you want to front load the spending of your resources so that you can actually enjoy getting to use the characters you get with those resources. And this Gala Dragalia, in addition to having those new characters featured, as we get a crash, one final time for this last send-off, of course. But in addition to having those two characters featured, you also have the opportunity to spark or use worm sigils to get other characters too from past Gala showcases. So let's take a quick look at that here. And you may know if you watched my recent videos, I was able to get Euden already off of the free daily tenfold summons and in combination with daily deals. So make sure you're logging in for your free daily tenfolds for sure. But you can see in the worm sigils that summoning on the showcase, if you happen to get Bondforged Prince and Zethia along the way, well, you're also going to have an opportunity, if you spend the appropriate amount of summons, to also potentially pick up a Gala Xena, Zethia, Chell, Audric, Not, Leaf, Emil, Mim, or Gatov, and then quite a variety of Gala Dragons too. So this might be another reason to consider summoning here, but really, I think that with the free daily tenfolds, you already are going to be summoning on this, and my personal opinion is, why not go all the way and spend the rest of your resources on this, especially if you have enough to round out with a spark. So that's my take on this showcase overall. We know that there are still going to be summon showcases in the future as well, but we don't really know the content or the layout of those, how frequently those are going to happen, what they're actually going to feature. So it's hard to say how lucrative some of those will be, but I do hope that as the game comes to its conclusion, we start to get some more generous summoning opportunities to pick up those characters we may have missed out on along the way, but still really want to try out before service ends for the game. So I'm optimistic we may get like some seasonal reruns. We may get some pretty nice showcases to round things out here as we head toward July, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Nothing is certain when it comes to the future of summon showcases at this point, but I think that there's a possibility that some of the fan favorite characters will make their return at an appearance rate up. Alright, so having said all of that, the main reason I wanted to make this video, since I know a lot of you are already summoning on this one, already planning on summoning it, but I just want to talk about Bondforged Prince and Bondforged Zethia's kits one last time, for old time's sake, like we like to do, analyze them, talk about how they fit into the current content in the game. I'll be able to give some hands-on impressions this time around for Euden in particular, because I did get to try him out and play him in the Kaleidoscape and have summoned him, so I'll also add that in. But really, I think that it's just, it's a monumental occasion. It's our last time to review and analyze new adventures, so I think that it's important that I put this video out there, even though I think you probably already know a lot of the decision making and stuff like that around the showcase is just going to be go for it on this one. Okay, so let's get into things, and let's go ahead and start off with Bondforged Zethia. So Bondforged Zethia is a light wand. Our bonds can make us stronger. Of course, a fitting note for the themes of Dragalia Lost to name both these characters Bondforged. I think it's appropriate. It just fits what the game has been all about all along. A couple of cool notable details in her portrait here with Nedrick and Euden in the background. And I'd be curious to read her story. I think that's going to be fun because Zethia has gone on an interesting character journey throughout Dragalia Lost, with all the time she spent with Nedrick and away from the prince, away from Euden. I think that she actually had an opportunity to develop as her own character, especially when you look at what happened with the anniversary raid events, her interacting with Ilya and Mine. So she is her own proper character at this point, which I really appreciate, since when the game started, she was sort of just our MacGuffin, our person that we were chasing after, that was the central plot device to propel the action of the story, but she wasn't really fully fleshed out, and I think that we've reached a point that she actually is. So she is an attack unit, in addition to being a light wand, and Zethia, having awakened the power of bonds, using the powers of an Auspex and Bahamut, she fights with her friends to save the world. She now has both the ability to fight and the strength of heart to stand tall on her own. So her skills are Blazing Fount and Ring of Affection. Let's start with those. Blazing Fount deals damage to the target and nearby enemies and inflicts Flash Burn. If the user has Power of Bonds, this skill will instead deal damage to the target and nearby enemies, dispel one buff from each of them, and inflict Flash Burn. The user will be immune to knockback during this attack. Alright, so she has some kind of unique buff called Power of Bonds. This is shareable, which is pretty cool. And it's also going to be able to cause both Flash Burn and Dispel if you have that Power of Bonds. So Flash Burn, highly relevant against Legend Iblis. It's been very useful to have good Flash Burn enablers for that fight to get through the first phase with your light element team. It's necessary to have. So having a nice new DPS with the ability to Flash Burn frequently is going to be a positive thing for that content. And the opportunity to Dispel also comes up in Iblis. Of course, that's also helpful for earlier content when we think about Legend Tartarus, and probably going to be good as we look ahead to Primal Zodiark. And that's actually releasing this month, so it's going to be beneficial to have this new light adventure in your roster for that as well. But I think that the interesting thing here is, besides all the special effects, the damage on this is just very solid. So you're getting 2400% damage when you use this without Power of Bonds, and then when you use it with Power of Bonds, you're getting even more damage. It's a pretty powerful nuke in this first skill, so I think that that's also noteworthy. It hits the target and nearby enemies. That could be relevant, the nearby enemies piece, in case Zodiark summons anything or you have to hit an AoE. So it's something to think about. That's come up in past content, but usually content where you use other types of elements of adventurers. For the other Sinister Dominion fight where you use light element adventurers, that's going to be Lilith on the legend difficulty. Certainly seems like a potentially effective adventure, because everything here in Zethia's kit appears to work fine under Curse of Nihility conditions. So let's read on to her second skill, and then we'll learn more about what Power of Bonds does. Ring of Affection, her second skill, grants all teammates the Power of Bonds effect. If an adventurer has Power of Bonds, when that adventurer would take damage greater than or equal to their remaining HP, that damage is nullified, the effect is consumed, and damage is instead dealt to the rest of the user's team. This damage equals 20% of each teammate's maximum HP. Wow, so that's pretty cool. If the user has Power of Bonds, the skill will instead restore HP to all teammates and remove Power of Bonds from the entire team. So it sort of alternates. The second time you use this, well, if you have Power of Bonds, you're going to restore HP to the entire team, but you're going to lose Power of Bonds on the entire team. So then the next time you use it, you don't have it, you'll grant it again. But this is really powerful because from what I can tell, this doesn't use the revive system. So some of the other adventurers that have played around in this space of death prevention or resurrection, their effects only work in quests and content where you have revives available. But this, because it's damage mitigation and mitigates damage that would be lethal, it should work regardless of whether a quest has revives available, meaning it should work against higher difficulty content where you're not allowed to revive, like the Legend difficulty, Sinister Dominion, or let's say the Master difficulty of the Primal Dragon Trials. So that's potentially quite strong, and where it's probably not going to be quite as good is with things like damage over time, so Creeping Corrosion or Afflictions. It may not really help you too much there, because if it prevents that last hit of lethal damage, but you still have that affliction or dehabilitation, then when you restore, or when that damage is prevented, then you're probably still going to take lethal damage thereafter. So, the damage is instead dealt to the rest of the user's team. So if it's something also that would wipe out your whole team, I guess that wouldn't really protect you. But this is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Ring of Affection. I'd be curious to see how this works out in Primal Zodiark in particular, since we really just have no idea how that fight's going to be designed. As far as I can tell, I can't think of any, major use scenarios for the Legend Sinister Dominion, but who knows? This could be effective enough at damage mitigation that maybe it helps enable some auto-type setups, something like that. I think it's not that likely for Iblis just because that fight put so much pressure on you to continuously afflict the boss that the auto fail points are less about being able to survive and more about being able to meet the right thresholds for afflicting the boss. But this is one that is exciting to see. It's a very powerful effect. We haven't seen much like this. The closest thing I can think of is Harl's, second skill that has a similar effect, but basically diffuses damage from Harl onto the rest of the team. Alright, so let's continue reading on. Also, just to point out real quick, this is a small way of her healing the team as well when it alternates. So she has a little bit of her healer persona here too. Her co-ability is skill damage, which is standard on wands, and then she has this chain co-ability, which is more defensive in nature. Both of these are pretty normal. Her abilities are Bondforged Aspects 2, when the user's HP drops to 30%, restores the user's HP, and if the user has Power of Bonds, also restores HP to the rest of the team. Very nice. So that's a way of healing that she has built in too, but after activating it won't activate again for 45 seconds. Also, using Ring of Affection will grant the entire team a team critical damage amp with a maximum team amp level of 3. After it's granted, it won't be granted again for 30 seconds. So these team critical damage amps seem to continue to be a way that Bahamut's power is represented. I wonder if the devs, looking back on things, when they saw how good critical damage double buff was with the Feline Hospitality Wormprint and later another Wormprint that copied that same effect, I wonder if that's one of the reasons that critical damage amps have been pretty prized and pretty powerful, usually on marquee adventurers, and dragons for that matter. Regardless, I think it's great this starts at the team level and not the personal amp level, so this is definitely going to be good with that max level of 3. Unbreakable Bonds 2, giving her dual resistances to poison and curse is her next ability. And then Bondforged Might 2 is her last ability, increases attack skill damage by 20%, also increases attack skill damage by a further 40% when the user has Power of Bonds. Wow, 60% is no joke, and particularly considering there's never been that light element skill damage dragon, this is a substantial boost to the skill bracket for damage, and really, I think that Zethia looks very, very strong here. She's probably not going to be the best for a dragon like Kronos Nyx, where you want to focus more on strength. You're probably going to be dragon striking, because she really has crazy high skill damage on her own. So in terms of, DPS, when you're shapeshifting, let's say you're bringing her to co-op, so every character gets a shapeshift, maybe not the highest in the game, but when you have her as a backline character for solo or auto play, she should be a very good contributor, because then you're not going to be shapeshifting with her. It's just the damage that she deals as an AI. And in that sense, I think she's going to provide a lot of utility between flash burn, dispel, damage prevention, critical damage amps, high DPS on her own, a little bit of healing. She feels like such a well-rounded character. Love to see it. I could see her being used for sure in auto setups for Primal Zodiarch, especially on Expert once that releases later in the month. Alright, now let's talk about our last adventure we're going to review here, Bondforged Prince, aka Bondforged Euden. My friendships will become a wind of hope. Love the upgrade to his design, the luscious locks with the green frosted tips and Primal Midgard Stormer there in the background. It's a great look for Euden. Euden, I think the Gala variant is great, but this is like a true glow up in my view. And to the point that Gala Euden looks cool to me, the original Euden looks a little bit, he doesn't look the greatest anymore. When I see these new forms that he has, he just feels a little bit basic. But this Bondforged Prince, this is otherworldly with the armor. The elements of green give it almost like a sci-fi feel, so I really like it personally. And I'm hoping we get this sword that he's wielding. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's already in the Alberian Battle Royale for all I know, or Kaleidoscape. Y'all probably know that better than I do, but if it's out there, it's gotta be out there. I have to pick this one up and make sure that I equip it to him for sure. But Bondforged Prince, of course, focused on bonds. It's the whole story of Dragalia, bonds between humans and dragons, humans and Sylvans, dragons and Sylvans, yada yada yada. But that is what makes Dragalia Lost what it is, right? That emphasis. Adventure details here. He is an attack unit, typical amount of shared skill points. That's actually something we have to check nowadays with Emil, having broken the mold on that. But the adventure details say the 7th Scion having found new strength through the power of his bonds. So long as he has the bonds he's cultivated with his friends, he can fight off all despair and pave the way to new possibilities filled with hope. Love the reference to possibilities too. If you've played in the main campaign, you'll know why that word is there and why it's very deliberate. His skills are Blazing Tempest and Vortex Circlet. Let's start with Blazing Tempest. The user takes the form of Primal Midgard Stormer and deals damage to the target and nearby enemies. This attack partially fills the dragon gauge if it connects. The user then returns to their original form, deals further damage to enemies in a line, and inflicts Storm Lash. Certain abilities that activate while shapeshifted will affect Primal Midgard Stormer's attack. And then, if it's used while shapeshifted, so when you're in your dragon form, a variant called United Tempest is used instead. That deals damage to surrounding enemies and lowers their wind resistance. Then deals damage to the enemies directly ahead and inflicts stun. It is possible to charge the skills gauge by attacking and use it up to twice during one shapeshift. So basically, that's the dragon skill for Bondforged Prince here. And as we'll see, he's going to have a unique dragon transformation into Primal Midgard Stormer. So basically, this describes what his dragon skill is when he's transformed. Lowering wind resistance fits in line with what Primal Midgard Stormer, or rather Midgard Stormer 0, already did as a dragon. That screen-wide AoE type move appears to be what Primal Midgard Stormer does here too. But you can recharge it and use it twice, and you also get the stun effect on enemies directly ahead. It's a really strong skill to have when transformed. And moreover, Blazing Tempest, even when you're just using it, the normal skill here, when you're playing as Euden, you get that cut-in transformation to become Primal Midgard Stormer, much like we got the transformations with Alberius, where he'd become Chthonius or Midgard Stormer in his moves. And it's good. It partially fills the Dragon Gauge. It's going to cause Stormlash when you return to your original form. Very, very strong, and I think if maybe we could skip ahead a little bit here, as I think there's some information here that's important. Regarding Bondforged Prince standard attacks and skills, abilities that increase dragon damage while shapeshifted, such as dragon damage plus X%, and abilities that grant effects to attacks performed while shapeshifted, such as Windworm's Dragonlight, apply to the 5th attack in Bondforged Prince's standard attack combo and attacks performed by Primal Midgardsormr when using the skills Blazing Tempest or when the skills Blazing Tempest and Vortex Circlet are used. So unlike many other Dragon Specialist characters, these partial transformations that Euden does actually take advantage of dragon damage passives, which you can stack a lot of via affinity bonuses and even just via Wyrmprints themselves. They're available. Dragon damage is one of the abilities that's available that you can cap out on Kaleidoscape Wyrmprints too. So there's great potential to deal tremendous damage here in a way that not many other characters can actually tap into to take advantage of. So I think that's worth noting. Let's read on to the second skill here. Vortex Circlet. The user takes the form of Primal Midgardsormr, deals damage to surrounding enemies, inflicts stun, then returns to their original form. The user then deals further damage to surrounding enemies. The second attack significantly reduces the mode gauge. Certain abilities that activate while shapeshifting will affect Primal Midgardsormr's attack. So both of these have one part of the attack while you're actually shapeshifted and one part while you're back as Euden. That mode gauge reduction is a huge chunk to where that could annihilate a Berserk boss, let's say. If you're having to use Euden against Legend difficulty of Ciela, that could be very significant. You could probably really quickly make good work of her. Maybe you could even break her very quickly in the normal part of that fight before you get to the Berserk phase. I'm sure, there's no doubt in my mind, that Euden here is going to make quick work of endgame enemies like that. And because both of these attacks you get to be Primal Midgardsormr, you're also going to be pretty good at things like crowd control. So when you're fighting against Yaldabaoth, which is one of the bosses in the Legend Sinister Dominion where you want to be able to deal with lots of enemies, both Blazing Tempest and Vortex Circlet, and for that matter, United Tempest when you're transformed, all three of these are going to be great at dealing with lots of small enemies. You can stun them. They're usually not immune to stun, which is going to help you. The only thing is, you're not going to be able to shapeshift as frequently in Yaldabaoth unless you step onto the scales and get rid of your Twisted Blessing on the Legend difficulty. So that would be one slight weakness that Euden has for that content. Now, thinking about the other Sinister Dominion battle where you want to use Wind Element Adventurers, that of course would be Legend Iblis. It's in the second phase. You can definitely spam shapeshifting. And there, your real concern is just being able to afflict the boss the appropriate number of times. And at least Euden is going to be a contributor with the Stormlash on the first skill. So even though the stun and crowd control and AoE damage is less relevant there, he's still going to be a powerful DPS adventurer that is contributing to your overall mission of being able to cause afflictions. So let's continue reading on. Co-ability Shapeshifting Boost 8. So this is the same co-ability that Gala Euden has. We now have it on a Wind Element Adventure along with Wind Dragon Haste plus 20%. Very sizable. So those are actually pretty unique and pretty special here. Abilities are Windworm's Dragonlight 2, Unbreakable Bonds 2, and Tempest Charge 2. Windworm's Dragonlight 2 grants the user a unique Force Strike that deals damage to enemies in a line, performing this Force Strike during a standard attack, then immediately following it with another standard attack, will resume the user's standard attack combo from their most recent attack. So pretty cool that you can interweave that with your combos. If this unique Force Strike is performed while in mid-air during the fourth attack in a user's standard attack combo, a powered up variant that deals more damage will be used instead. So that appears to be the optimal time to use that unique Force Strike, and having tested Euden a little bit in Kaleidoscape, my impression was that in this fourth attack, he jumps in the air and becomes Midgardsormr, and then you unleash the Force Strike and it comes out afterward. But I was playing on, I think, 2 times speed, so everything was happening a little bit quickly for me, but it looked very sweet in auto when he was pulling it off on his own. It seemed to be quite powerful, and he was definitely transforming interwoven with the attack sequence that he was doing. When shapeshifting, the user will transform into Primal Midgardstormer regardless of what dragon they are equipped with. Primal Midgardstormer's dragon skill level will match the level of the adventurer's initial skill, displayed at the top of their skill list. Shapeshifting will grant the entire team a team critical damage amp with a maximum team amp level of 3. So there you go. You have your bonus for shapeshifting, and just like Zethia, we have team critical damage amps making an appearance again, with that max level of 3 being very solid. So this is going to be great in Nihility content. Even when your Dragon's Claws effects are not going to work, Euden is a dragon character, or dragon transformation centric character, that's going to perform very well despite that. So I can't wait to try him against Primal Mercury when that content is released. But basically, because he still can take advantage of dragon damage, and he's still giving this team-wide bonus every time you shapeshift, and the shapeshift itself deals a lot of damage and debuffs the boss with that wind res down. When in dragon form, the user's attacks are granted the ability to dispel one enemy buff. So yes, by the way, he has Dispel in his kit as well. It doesn't apply to the damage dealt as the user shapeshifts, but this should apply to the skills and the parts of the basic combo sequence where Euden transforms too. Then finally, the last two abilities, Unbreakable Bonds 2 provides dual resistance to freeze and bog of 100%, and Tempest Charge 2 fills 50% of the dragon gauge when the user's HP drops to 40% once per quest, and reduces dragon gauge depletion over time by 20%. So this is very similar to Gala Euden's last ability too, with that emergency shapeshift at low HP, and can definitely be exploited, especially in co-op content, where you deliberately try to go to a low HP, and you can coordinate that with your teammates to do very explosive and degenerate things. I think that's pretty much it as far as this showcase, y'all. So I had a lot of fun personally going through just talking about Bondforged Prince, Bondforged Zethia, just going through one last showcase to discuss these new kits, the skills and abilities on these adventurers. I can't wait to summon Zethia so I can try her out. Definitely have to do some more testing with Prince as well. It's been very fun playing him so far, but I will say I've been less focused on optimality, less focused on number crunching. Maybe I'll pay a little bit more attention to that as I work out my Mercurial Gauntlet clears and things of that nature. But I can certainly confirm he's been super fun to play and seems to be very, very strong, a fitting last pair of adventures for Dragalia Lost. I wish you all luck with your summons, hope everything goes well for you, hope you're enjoying Dragalia Lost despite the circumstances, and creating some memories that will last over this month and the next several months. That is going to do it for today though, everyone, so thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.